Hello, and welcome back to Breck to the Future. Today we have a civic signal for you. We are going to be talking about UBI, also known as Universal Basic Income. We want to talk about what problems that it's solving, where it's being tested, who's building on it, and whether it might be a cornerstone of this new economic era that we're about to find ourselves in. So, appreciate you joining us again here today. Let's dig in. So, picture this, it's 2030. We have robots and various robotics assembling homes, driving trucks. We've got algorithms and agents that are writing code, they're scanning x-rays, managing the logistics. I mean, the world has become more productive than ever, right? Output is up, profits continue to climb, and those machines that we have finally built at mass scale, well, they don't need a lunch break. But for the millions of people that have been displaced, work continues to vanish. Warehouse jobs, gone. Customer service, it's been automated. The gig economy is saturated, and what remains often is not paying enough to survive. We're going to see wages stagnate, and even as the top 1% capture more wealth than ever, um, we still need to see something within the bottom 99%. So for many, the promise of hard work, it feels like it's leading to stability, but it actually isn't. It could be part of this broken contract that I think many are going to start to clamor as we see more job loss due to automation. So, what if we did something radical? What if we guaranteed everybody a financial floor, right? No strings attached. It's not welfare, it's not charity, but it's simply a check. For every month, for every person. This is effectively what universal basic income is, also again known as UBI. It's a concept that's moved from academic fringe to a serious policy debate in this age of automation. And want to bring that to you today and talk more about it. So let's dig in. So, why UBI and why now? Well, automation is accelerating fast, right? According to the World Economic Forum, we're going to see 92 million jobs be displaced in the next 5 to 8 years. On the flip side, they've also countered that we should see over 100 million new jobs be created, but we don't expect that to be in the same place, industry, or even with the same workers, right? A truck driver isn't going to become a machine learning engineer overnight, and that's just one piece of this crisis. So the gig economy is projected to hit nearly $600 billion globally by 2030. It's promising flexibility, but it rarely delivers security. With the gig economy, health benefits are rare, stability is worse, and even in high income countries like the United States, millions are one emergency away from a financial ruin. Welfare problems, they're often complex, they're conditional, but they're also stigmatized. In the United States, a $1 raise in income can cost someone hundreds in lost benefits. It's a phenomenon known as the welfare cliff. Meanwhile, inequality does continue to widen. Pew Research has shown that most income growth in the last 2 decades has gone to the wealthiest. That would make sense. They're taking risks. They have equity in companies. They are deploying capital because they have the ability to. But add into that the rise of AI and robotics, and that erosion of traditional work, you're going to see a system that's under pressure. That's where UBI steps in. It's not as a silver bullet, but it could be the systemic response to a world where work isn't guaranteed, but survival should not depend on luck. So, what is UBI? What is universal basic income? Let's talk about the definition of it and also the distinction of it. Universal basic income is simply, in theory, everybody gets it, right? No conditions. You're paid regularly in cash. You can almost think of it as like a dividend, right? But it's not welfare and it's not a handout. And it's also not Milton Friedman's negative income tax, where only low earners receive top-ups that eventually phase out. UBI would be flat. It would go to everyone. And then, if you're wealthy, you simply pay it back through taxes. But this idea isn't new. So, in 1797, Thomas Paine proposed a national fund to pay every citizen, which would be financed by land taxes. Martin Luther King Jr. called guaranteed income the simplest and most effective solution to poverty. Even conservative economist Milton Friedman supported a cousin of UBI, arguing that it was more efficient than a bloated welfare bureaucracy. And there are real world versions already in motion. So, Alaska. Alaska pays every resident a dividend from oil profits, and they've been doing this since 1982. They pay about $1,000 to $2,000 annually. Finland ran a national trial in 2017 through 2018, giving 2,000 unemployed citizens about 560 pounds per month. Iran, of all countries, launched a nationwide UBI in 2011. It was funded by energy subsidy cuts. And in Stockton, California, we also saw from 2019 to 2021, a couple hundred residents received $500 a month. In every case, it's noted improved well-being. There was little to no reduction in work, and in Stockton, full-time employment actually increased amongst those that they trialed this with from 28% up to 40% in 1 year. So there's certainly evidence that it doesn't make people lazy. It makes them more stable, which is what you would hope to see. Now, the global pilots and that local proof, we have to look at the data because we are now seeing that UBI is not theory anymore. So, Finland found that recipients had better mental health overall, they had a greater trust in institutions, and there was no decrease in job-seeking behavior. In Stockton, California, they saw also improved mental health, a reduction of income volatility, and higher full-time employment for those that were able to elevate themselves. The Canadian pilot was cut short by politics, but even in 18 months, recipients reported better health, more educational enrollment, and fewer ER visits. Kenya, also home to one of the largest running UBI experiments. It's managed by GiveDirectly. Over 20,000 people are receiving a monthly payment, many of them up for more than 12 years. The results so far, an increase in entrepreneurship, increase in school attendance, there's food security, and there's no drop in work. That Iranian program that we talked about, despite being challenged by inflation, it initially reduced poverty dramatically, and there was no major reduction in the labor supply. So these pilots, they span continents, right? They span democracies, even in dictatorships, um, various income levels, and political systems, right? And while the scale of it and the funding vary, the outcome seems to align that people are spending on essentials, right? Those Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They're buying food, housing, medicine. Their mental health is improving. The work effort stays steady. In fact, it even has improved in some areas. And the fears, well, we seem to think that they're largely unfounded. Now, that does raise the question of this, we could call it a cultural tug of war, right? Like who actually ultimately deserves the help? So UBI is challenging something deeper than policy. It's challenging the worldview. In the United States, especially, there's a cultural script that says if you don't work, you don't eat. The idea of giving everyone money, no matter what, can trigger backlash, but that backlash, again, does seem to ignore the real data that we're seeing. Again, Stockton, less than 1% of that spending went to alcohol or tobacco. In Kenya, recipients used that money to invest in farming enhancements and send their kids to school. In Finland, people reported more dignity, more autonomy, and less stress in their day-to-day life. UBI seems to be supported by people all over the spectrum. Progressives are seeing it as a poverty killer. Libertarians like it for reducing government red tape. Again, Same amount for everybody, no questions asked. Little to no red tape there. Even tech billionaires like Elon Musk and Sam Altman, they do see it as a solution to automation's displacements. And the younger generations, those raised in gig work and debt, they could see it as a baseline for freedom. But still, the critics worry, will it reduce ambition? Will it destroy the work ethic, inflate the economy? Well, let's tackle those next. So, the economics. Can we afford UBI? It has been determined as of this episode that a $1,000 a month UBI for every adult in the United States would cost around $3.6 trillion dollars annually. But that's just a gross figure, right? The net cost, after taxing it back from high earners, replacing some of those welfare programs, and rerouting existing tax credits, excuse me, could be significantly lower. Andrew Yang's campaign proposed funding UBI through a 10% value added tax, closing some of the tax loopholes that various people are able to enjoy, redirecting existing welfare expenditures, and taxing companies that benefit from automation. We could see carbon tax dividends, we could see other automation taxes, sovereign wealth funds are on the table, but what about inflation? Well, Iran's case showed that inflation spikes when cash payments are poorly indexed and the economy is already unstable. It's not because people have money. In contrast, Alaska's oil dividends been stable for decades without causing a runaway inflation. But more importantly, UBI is redistributing, right? It seems to be a fairer, less controversial redistribution, right? Even for everybody. The rich are going to pay more in taxes than they receive in UBI. The poor are going to keep the full amount. Middle income earners tend to break even or maybe even gain slightly. Now, it's a radical idea, but it is not an unaffordable one. And especially when we weigh it against the cost of doing nothing, right? Rising inequality, we have social unrest, and the potential of humans being wasted, right? UBI is unlocking a lot at the human level too. So Alex, for example, he's a factory worker in the Midwest. He's laid off in 2024. With this UBI payment, he's able to enroll in a community college for a sector that's growing, maybe solar technology or other alternative energies. A year later, he's able to help advance that mission across Illinois. We could see Monica, a single mom in Tacoma, using that income to avoid eviction, buy what she needs without going into debt. When she has that stability, she's able to keep her job and later focus on getting promotions. Now, these aren't hypotheticals. These are real outcomes from real pilots. We've just removed the names. When survival is guaranteed, people don't give up. They tend to rise up, and that is very encouraging. So, we want to talk about now who is building it, who's focusing it on it, who's promoting it. So the movement is growing, from bottom up and top down. So we have a group, Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. It's led by Michael Tubbs. He is looking to include 100 United States cities to pilot or support these cash payments. GiveDirectly, as we mentioned earlier, is running a long-term UBI in Kenya with great success. The Economic Security Project is another one that's funding research and public education surrounding UBI. BIEN stands for the Basic Income Earth Network, is connecting global activists that are able to put their heads together on how do we tackle this. Even Sam Altman, his WorldCoin, despite the controversy, it's exploring how crypto and biometrics might support a global UBI. We are seeing Canada, Scotland, Spain all actively experimenting with national or regional cash transfers. I mean, the COVID-19 pandemic also shifted public perception. In 2021, the US poverty dropped to a record low, 5.2%, when the expanded child tax credit delivered a monthly cash payment to families. That wasn't theory, that was proof, especially in one of the wildest times in our recent memory. So, big picture, what is the end game? Well, in the short term, UBI is going to soften the blow of automation. It's going to give us space for people to retrain, to regroup, and to recover is the hope. But in the long term, it is a step towards a post-scarcity world, a world where machines are going to generate the abundance. And the question isn't, well, how do I survive? But it becomes, what do I want to become, right? So think of it this way. We get to a world where we are able to drive the costs of virtually everything as close to zero as possible, right? We have so much automation that's able to build homes for us, to manufacture our needs, to provide our food supply, where, we look at our paychecks now and we compare them 10 years from now, and we see our costs of food and housing and other of the essentials, we see that changing. We see that dropping down. So now we have cash to go out and to buy other things, things that, we're looking as maybe add-ons and luxuries, but not needs, right? Um, but in the long term, again, this is a step towards a post-scarcity world. We're going to stop tying human worth to paychecks, which is actually kind of an interesting concept that we're able to do. We're going to start valuing care, creativity, contribution. I mean, again, Martin Luther King Jr. called a guaranteed income a tool to abolish poverty directly. He believed that it would not just produce economic stability, but it would host positive psychological changes. And he was right. And we now have the data to prove it. So, to in closing, I guess here's the question that I would want to pose you with. What if survival was guaranteed, but purpose became the challenge? What would you build? What would it look like? What risks would you take? Would you help someone else? Would you focus on an effort greater than yourself because you didn't have to worry about your day to day? Now, UBI isn't a cure-all, right? But it's one of the boldest structural solutions we've got in the face of automation, inequality, and a system stagnation. And the evidence is building, right? The culture is shifting. We see the builders are at work. So maybe it's time we got serious about this future too. I want to thank you for listening to another episode of Breck to the Future, another Civic Signal. Excited to launch more. I have launched my Substack where I will start to post these papers that I have discussed. I will post two papers. One of them will be the full paper at length. The other will be a more digestible summary, in addition to episodes like this. So looking forward to more of these. Again, my name was Travis with Breck to the Future. Stay curious, stay kind, and let's keep building together.